Hey there, guys, and welcome back to Eve Fittings with Jeff Rader. I am your kind of co-host, Hendrik Taladar, and today we're going to be looking at cheap fits for cheap people in Eve. We're going to be looking at what T1 frigates and stuff like that, Jeff.
Yeah, the goal this week, we start off faction battleships and battle cruisers, kind of working our way down in price. But what I find really interesting, like what kind of inspired me this week, was the idea of a fleet that you could take out with your buddies, not lose much ISK, and have fun. So I've already kind of gamed this out a little bit, and what I decided to do is go with a full Galente fleet. What we're going to start with is figuring out what our DPS ships should be. So I already had a look through. The main DPS T1 Frig for Galente is the Incursus. I'm just going to bring one of those up, and we'll call this CZ Cheap Fleet. All right, so now we want to start out by getting the most DPS we can out of this. This is our DPS platform. So that's going to be neutron blasters. So light neutron blasters. Let's see if these fit. So we'll switch these to void. Cool, so 160 DPS already. That's good. And actually, we're going to kind of work on two things at once here, because what we know is I want to go all Galente. You can mix things up if you want. But basically the idea with this is that we'll bring a DPS platform, a tackling platform, and a logistics ship. So the frigate logistics for Galente is the... what the hell is it called now? Navitas. There it is. Cool. So CZ Cheap Fleet. And the Navitas does armor reps. So we're just going to leave that for now. But basically what we know out of this Incursus is we want to make it an armor platform. And the nice thing with basically it might not work. I don't think it's going to work. But we're going to try and shoehorn rolled a 400 millimeter plate on. So generally speaking with frigs and plates, the 200 millimeter plate is sort of the standard. The 400 millimeter plate normally requires some sacrifices to cram on. We're going to see if it's worth it. If you see here, it's 30... grid. That's pretty much all our grid. So, that means we don't even have any room for propulsion mod and that stuff. So I'm just going to write that idea off, and we're going to go for a 200 millimeter plate. Now, two options here. There's the Tech 2 plate, which is more armor added, but it's also more grid and more CPU. So we're going to see if we can start with that. Might not work, but this is what we'll do. We'll just kind of adjust here and there. So got that. Now let's see here. What are we looking at for? Okay, so this actually looks pretty good to me. So we've still got 20 grid free, and the only other real mod we have to add is 1 meganewton micro warp drive. So we're going for the limited one. That's pretty much the standard one we always want to go for. I mean, there's really no need to ever go for a different one. Tech 2 micro warp drives give you less cap penalties. So we can just see here, so out of Tech 2 drops our cap to 384. Out of Tech 1 drops us to 375. So it's a little bit more of a cap hit, but if you check this out, and then this, we can see that the T2 activation cost is 50. Why does my mouse over never work? Whatever. No, oh, actually, I know why. 1 second. Just get rid of this puppy. There we go, cool. So the activation cost is 50 compared to 45 for the T1. So it actually works out that the T1's a little better on cap when it's running. So my philosophy is, unless you're using your capacitor for something critical, I always go with the Tech 1 meta micro warp drive. So that's what we're going to go with here. 51 out of 56 grid. Nice. Okay, good. And we've got 5 modules to fit in here. So that's going to be another 5 grid. We might end up slightly over here, but we're going to try it out. So what else do we want? We want damage control. Galente ships especially are really good to have damage controls on. If you see, I just control left clicked right here to disable this, just so you can see. Galente ships have a bonus, almost like a built-in racial thing, to having more structure, so having damage control is definitely necessary. And we'll turn the plate back on. All right, and then the mids. The mids seem pretty obvious to me. We want a scrambler, and we want a web. Let's go for the faint epsilon scrambler, which is the meta 4 one, and we'll look at that in a bit, because I want to make this a cheap fleet. I don't really want to be spending more than we have to. And so the fleeting propulsion inhibitor is the meta 4 web. Now we run into our first fitting challenge. We have 8. We have 8 CPU left. Okay, and that kind of sucks because we still have 2 slots to fit, and that basically means we're not fitting on a damage mod, which is what we want. This is our DPS platform, right? So Already I can see we're going to have to do something. So what we can try here is we'll try and drop the damage control 2 to a meta 4. Try and add this magnetic field stabilizer. Boop. And we're 6% over already. We still got one more slot. That slot can be fit with something that doesn't take any CPU, but I'm still not super happy with this. So our options are thus. We can drop a couple guns, or we can try a T1 plate. The T1 plate's less armor, better fitting, but it also gives us one other advantage. So where's the 200s here? So check that out. Check this out. If you see, the reinforced rolled tungsten has less of a mass penalty, meaning we'll be a little faster. So even if we're losing 75 raw armor, we're getting a little bit something. We're getting a little something back for it, which is nice. So let's just try and drop this to 200 millimeter rolled tungsten. Still a little over. Still got one slot to fit. And this is a cheap fleet, so we don't want to be using a 3% implant because they're about 20 million ISK. And our ship itself right now is at 17 million, so not going to do that. So what we can do here is we'll add our final low slot mod, okay? This is going to be an armor fleet with logistics. So what we want to add here, ideally, would be an energized adaptive nano. Now, I know from experience, long experience, that takes 36 power CPU, so that's a no-go. But what's nice is there's an adaptive nano plating mod that takes 0 CPU. So we're basically looking just to find a way now to get ourselves to either a 1% power grid implant, which costs less than $1 million, which I think is completely fine, or no implant at all. So the options for that are drop guns down a level. But first, I'm going to just see if we can get away with this. And this will have two bonuses for us. It will cheapen up the ship. So we have a Feint Epsilon Warp Scrambler. And if you see right here, our price for the ship right now is 18 million. Drop that off, drops to 15 million. So we're spending 3 million on a Warp Scrambler. And just add it right back. You see the optimal for that is 9 kilometers. We're just going to go and do this J5B. That'll save us 1 CPU. And only costs us 400 meters of range, which is pretty nice. So, it's kind of a nice trade-off. And we're still at 3%. The next thing we can hit up is the web. So our web options here are the fleeting propulsion. We're talking about 15 million ISK right now. Get rid of that. We're down to 12.9. Cool. So the one I typically go for is this X5 prototype engine innervator. And if you have a look here, boosh. The fleeting propulsion drops 60%. This drops 57.5. So just like the J5B, it's not really that much of a difference. Let's try that out. See if we can get into 1% range. Ooh, we're so close. So close. So we've got an option here now to drop down a little more. There's this Langor that'll save us 1 more CPU. This is only a 52.5% web. But you know what? Let's just go for it. Especially since we're using these in a fleet, it's likely there'll be more than 1 web. So that's pretty cool. I think that's all right. We're still at 2% though. So whatever, put this one back. Looks like we're gonna have to drop guns. So we're gonna do this. Do light neutron blaster to a light ion blaster 2. That gets us in fitting range, which is nice. But you know what, honestly, I don't love this just because we're sitting here, we got 13 million a ship. And let's get rid of this puppy, the internal force field array. 4.5 million. So we're basically we're flying something that using that 17 CPU damage control is more than doubling the price of the ship. So what are our options? There's a pseudo electrons, the next one down. Okay, that is the 1% range, but it's 8 million. Okay, or this F85 peripheral damage system. This nuts, still 2%. Okay, so we've got a couple options here. We can drop this to pseudo and save a few. 8.3 million is not bad. And we've just dropped. What's the DPS difference here between light ion and light neutron? So we're at 192 right now. It's costing us 3 DPS to do that, and a little bit of range. But since we're going to be at blaster range anyways, heck with it. And of course, you can always, if you want, go down a level on one of the other guns to get rid of that 1% if you really hate using implants. But, fitting implants are kind of the way she goes. And 1% are super cheap, so you can just buy a stack of 20 of them and never run out, probably. So let's leave that for now. So our DPS platform's pumping out 192 damage. Oh, and what I'm going to do here is just swap these modules around. The reason is because you'll now have 2 groups of guns. This way you can overheat these ones, the 2 neutrons, together. And if you see having them spread out, actually gives us an extra 20 seconds of heat. So we're going to do it like that. cool. And we see here 0 to 5 meters drone bay. Let's have a look. It's got a drone bay of only 5 meters. We're going to go for our friend the Hobgoblin 2 because it's the highest DPS drone. And since we'll be applying a scram and a web to our target, it makes a lot of sense just to go for highest deeps. All right, now we got rig slots to deal with. So basically we've got damage sorted out. The ship's speed is actually pretty good. It can hit 4K a second. We're going to hurt that now by adding on some armor buffer. So let's go for all Trimarchs. All right, so that gets us up to a really respectable 6K EHP. That's awesome. The only, and we're up to 241 DPS if we want to overheat. You can do that for a minute 39 or so. So basically a minute and a half. That's all you need in a Frig fight anyways. And if you're attacking a bigger target, you're just going to have to be a bit judicious in how you overload stuff. Right, now, this ship's basically done in my eyes. Only thing I'm going to point out here is the resists. Now, often I will opt to go for more buffer and not really care about the resist profile that much, but the problem with Galente's ships is they've got an explosive armor hull. So 36.5 compared to, 55 or 54 and 65. I want to plug that up, and the reason I'm caring about this now is because we're in a Frig fleet, and the most common drone to kill frigates is the Warrior 2, which does explosive damage, so we'll probably see a really good return on investment if we plug that up. So let's do that now. So we'll go for a small anti-explosive pump. Beautiful. Okay, good. So what do we have here? We've got a ship that costs 9.7 million ISK. Pretty good. And of course, you can drop that down more even if you want by doing a few other things. You can drop that down more by adding another ion and then drop this down to an F-85. That sort of thing. You can drop down a couple million. But I think under 10 million ISK is pretty good for a ship. Go to have fun with your friends. Sounds good. Right, and now we see the resist profile here, especially because we're going to be getting logistics reps. It's really nice to have a more even resist profile. So yeah, I think we're going to leave that. So we've got our damage ship. Does nice damage. It's cheap. It's pretty fast, 3,600 meters a second overheated. And just a few tips for when you're flying these, when your fleet's flying them. You want to make sure that people understand how to apply blaster DPS. And that will most likely be, let's look at the range here. 1.4 optimal plus 1.3 fall off. So you want to be within 1.4 to be applying good damage. And so you don't want people running in and orbiting the target with their MWDs on. The tightest orbit you can probably do with an MWD would be, probably 5 kilometers, 6 kilometers in that area. So you need to make your fleet understand that once they zoom into range, they need to cut that micro warp drive. And optimal damage would be to keep it range at 1,000 meters on your target. But the only problem is with keeping it range is if your target decides to shoot back, which you most likely will, and you're keeping it range, you won't have much transversal. So the best way to fly this would be a 500-meter orbit, basically. 500-meter orbit would put you at around probably 600 or 700 meters, which is still well inside optimal. So yeah, I think that's the way to do it. All right, next, the Navitas. This is the Galente logistics frigate. So first things first, let's add some armor reps. So there's a small remote. All right, so let's add 3 of these. And see, look at this. This ship just went from 260,000 ISK to 14 million. I don't know why these are 4 million apparently right now. If you can get these ones for 1 million or so, like a normal Tech 2 mod, I say go for it. Otherwise, let's try and keep this cheaper. And we're going to go for the Meta 4, which is the small Solace remote armor upper. There we go. So that's 500,000 ISK added. And we can just compare them here real quick. Show modules. So same range, and it says 4,800 here, but this ship gets a bonus. So the optimal is actually 28.8 kilometers. And the armor bonus is the same. It's just going to be the cycle times a little different. So 2.25 compared to 2.5. Not too bad. We're not losing too much by going with these cheaper reps. And also the cheaper reps will have better fitting. So you can see 12 and 7 here compared to 8 and 6. So this will let us get more tank on. Now, these will need a micro warp drive as well, because they're going to need to keep up with the Incursuses and also pull themselves out of range of the enemy. Generally speaking, you don't want to be close enough to be the most attractive target for your enemy, whatever you tackle. So you want to be not at 28 kilometers, but normally around 20, 25. So you get a little wiggle room, and you can kind of stay out of the way. Right, so we have about 28 grid left, 27 grid left. So let's just see if shoehorning a 400 millimeter plate is worth it with this ship. All right, so that puts us over by only 3% though, which I really like. So that's good. That's fixable with an ancillary current router. So I think we're going to go with that. So I'm just going to add that on now because we still have another 4 slots to fill up here. Oh, but I forgot one other thing too. Forget about that for a second. Let's leave this. Let's add on an essential piece of equipment here. You see the capacitor only lasts 38 seconds? 53 seconds with the MWD off. That means we absolutely have to have some sort of cap recharge or cap injection. Cap rechargers, let's just see what it looks like. I know for a fact it's not going to be that good. We'll fill our mids with cap rechargers. Gives you a little more time. Still not great. So that means you can only do a minute 34 of sustained repping. So what we're looking for here is a small cap booster. And I think we talked about this last week. Small cap boosters are the same fitting-wise. The electrochemical is the Meta 4. So it'll just be a little bit better as far as heat goes. So we're going to add that in there. And if you see charges here, there we go. This will fit one Navy Cap Booster 400, which is really nice. It puts us up to 100% stability. And just sort of a piloting thing is you see the Navitas has 430 base capacitor. This charges 400 of it. So in operation, you want to wait until you are empty to fire in the cap charge, basically. And then you'll be at full, and that'll give you plenty of time to reload it, because it'll only take you, let's see, what's the cycle time here? Duration 12 seconds, reload times 10, so in 22 seconds you can fire another one, and without this we can last 53 seconds, so we'll have no problem just constantly injecting capacitors, so that's really good. And actually, why don't we just have a quick look at what's going to be in the bay here. This is what's really cool. The newer versions of VFT have this. We add cap 400s. We see we have 280 meters, so let's try 12. So that's only 144 meters, so let's try 22. Yeah, so 23. Perfect. So we can fit in 23 cap charges, so you can keep fighting for quite a long time on the cargo bay bot. But this does blow at our attempt at getting away cheap on this. So let's see what an ancillary current router does for us here. Small ACR. Back in 1% range, which would be cool, but we still have 3 slots to fill up. So it pains me to say, but it looks like we're probably going to have to go down from rolled tungsten. Let's leave it for right now. Let's fill up the other slots. So we don't need to do damage in the Navitas, so our low slots are going to be about tank. So we'll add the damage control, and as you see, this doesn't quite get more like the Incursus did, but it still has a decent amount of structure, and damage controls add resistances without the same stacking penalties as other resist bonds, so you want to have one on there for sure. Now, CPU, got tons. We got 70 left, so that's brilliant. So we're going to add an ECCM. So the conjunctive ECCM is the Meta 4. Oops. Why am I so bad at clicking? There we go. There's a Tech 2 one as well, and we can just have a quick look at it so we know. All right, duration's the same, CPU's way worse. The sensor strength boosts are exactly the same, so this is a clear case of using the Meta 4 here. So we're going to add in this conjunctive. And now, I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit here, but I totally skipped ahead. Man, I'm dumb. Okay, forget about it. Forget about that mod for a second. We got the last low slot to deal with. We've got tons of CPUs, so we're going to get to use that Energize Adaptive. There we go. It still fits nice. Wow, how did that happen? We're up to 4% over now. And we still have one more mod to go, so let's just add that. I'll talk about the mid slot in a sec. I'm just seeing. So now we're at 6% with the single ACR. Okay, we lose this round. Let's go ahead and add in a 200 mil plate. We're going to go for the Tech 2 one, and we should be good. And as a result, we can lose the ACR. Beautiful. And we still are good on everything here. And we got 20 CPU free. So this ECCM will have, 36? So this ECCM here, you got about, I would say, 3 or 4 choices here. You could add in a target painter. I wouldn't recommend that as much. It's not going to help the small blasters out that much. One thing you could add would be a sensor dampener, a phased muon sensor damp. So your Logis can actually be helping you out in 2 ways. They can be healing you while also damping out enemy logistics, perhaps. Another thing you could do is a sensor booster. And that fits easily. So sensor booster's got the 2 roles with the Logi here. So one, it will counteract a damp. So let's just try that here. Phase muon. So let's say someone throws a damp on you. Okay, this isn't a targeting range damp. The heck with it. Yeah, so it'll basically, this will help you deal with target range damps. And another cool thing is the Navitas has really, really nice scan res. So you can do this show lock time on preset. Let's say a frigate at 40, that's going to be our Incursuses. Because most likely, if they're being primaried, they're not going to be able to use their micro warp drive because they'll be scrambled. So it takes 1.9 seconds to lock it there. And if we add in a scan res, 1.2 seconds. So that when you're saving ships with this little armor, that actually might come into play, and it might be a good mod. But the reason I started out with the ECCM is because of this. 13.2 sensor strength means that ECM drones will really, really, really annoy your Logi frigates. So that's why we're going to go for that conjunctive magnometric here. And you find out what kind of thing you want, but just by mousing over sensor strength here, so Glente or magnometric. I just kind of know now, but sometimes forget. Cool, so this thing's pretty much fit. Let's add in some buffer. Right, so for the 6k EHP, very nice. We still have that explosive hole, so let's go ahead and fill that. Costs us a little bit of EHP, but now we've got very, very even resist, so that's awesome. So, yeah, so now we've got our Navitas frigate. That's going to be our Logi, so we'll keep our Incursus alive while they do damage. And, yeah, here's a cool thing you can do with EFT. You can go projected effects and just drag this down 3 times. And so you can see here that these Navitas will tank 221 DPS onto each other. So if you have 2, that's how much one can do. And the cool thing about 221 DPS tanked is, it doesn't sound like a lot. You can see our frigates here doing 212, right? But it's quite a bit in terms of frigates because the damage doesn't apply that well. So if something with larger guns, say 220 millimeter autocannons are shooting at it, they probably aren't even going to be applying 200 actual DPS to your Incursus or your Navitas. So, it's actually a lot stronger than it is. And you can also overheat here. Oops. So overheating is 260 tanked, so that's cool. And let's go back up and just check our Incursus with these same reps here. Boom, boom, boom. So 200, not quite as good because we had to sacrifice the energized adaptive for adaptive nano. That's okay though. And when we overheat, oops, why is this not showing up on the thing? I don't get it. Data clicking. 236, okay, cool. So yeah, very good. All right, so what we've got here is a fleet already without the third component, the tackler, that can actually kind of just operate on its own. Like if you only have, say, 4 buddies that want to go out, bring 3 of these Incursus in 1 Logi ship. And these things are still decent tacklers, they still, have a weapon to scram and they're pretty fast, so they'll be okay without it. But let's say you have 10 guys, you probably want to go 2 Logi, 6 or 7 Incursus, and then we're going to add in the Atron. Atron, we're going to use like a budget interceptor. So, yep, CZ, cheap fleet. Alright, so we don't really care about damage for the Atron. We care about speed and tank, because the Atrons are quick ships, and they're going to be roaming, hopefully, ahead of the gang, trying to capture stuff, or, zipping out and grabbing people that are, off, or, just not within the initial tackle range. So they're going to be the first point. So we need a micro warp drive on our Atron. Oops. There we go. And we also want a warp disruptor, a long point. The Incursuses have scrams. So all the Atron really needs to do is keep a point on the target until the Atrons, until the Incursus get to there. So good, and we'll leave that in mid slot for just a quick second. It's probably going to be a web of fire though, or maybe even a scram if you wanted, but it'll probably be a web. Now, looking at this, I don't think we're going to be able to even try a 400 millimeter plate. It just doesn't feel like it. We've got lots of slots to fill. We wouldn't be able to fit guns. It would kind of be a nightmare. So let's just start straight off with the 200 millimeter plate. Now, for this, I don't even really want the Tech 2 plate as much. If you see here, Tech 2 plate 34, 86, and 4.4. And the rolled tungsten, 35 and 4.3. So we get a little more speed, which is actually going to matter on this ship. This ship does 5k a second right now, which is pretty nice. So we're going to leave it like that. And then in the low slots, we're going to go for damage control. And how much do we have here? Okay, so we still got like 73 CPUs. So let's try and energize adaptive. If this doesn't work out, we can drop it down to an adaptive nanoplating for basically free CPU-wise. So we'll keep that in mind. And let's go ahead and just add that web on right now. And so we've already decided that the X5 is going to be better price-wise for us because we want this fleet to be nice and cheap. So we're adding that puppy on right there. Good. And now blasters. So the Atron is not going to be your mainline damage ship. It'd be nice if it did, but what we really want the blasters on the Atron for is shooting drones. So you're going to be tackling stuff, maybe a rat or whatever, and was MWDing around him, at about 20 kilometers, and it runs that stable, so that's great. And you don't want to be getting in close to them, but what you will want to do is shoot his drones with your gun and your web as they come up for you. So let's try neutron blasters first. So light neutrons. Whoo! Okay, that's not going to work. So let's go ahead and get rid of those. Try a couple ions. Still not really there. Try 3 ions. We're getting there now. So, we're way over on CPU. We're a little bit over on that, on power grid. So let's go ahead and take the plunge right now and drop these down to an adaptive nano because we're clearly going to need it. Right, so now we're just over on CPU. Let's see if we can get away with doing this. Go for 1 electron. Now, electron blasters, they track really well, but their range just isn't that good. You see this loses a whole kilometer of fall off and 100 meters of optimal. But since it's only 1 gun, that's cool. And now we're good. So lots of CPU. And actually, you know what? Why don't we try this? Let's try and go back to the energized adaptive and try and get the damage control with an F85 there. Yeah, it fits. Sweet. So now we've got this is well. Let's just just show you that real quick. So the adaptive nano and damage control are 4200. Oh, it's already on that page. Cool. So we're at 4200, and then boom. So we're at 4100. Oh, okay. So in fact, dropping the damage control in this case, it appears to have been worse for us by losing a little bit. But I think you'll find right here if you mouse over this, effective armor HP is actually going to be a bit higher because the increased armor resist. Because basically, when this effective hit points takes into account everything, so it's also adding on the better resist to the structure. And in this case, we want to stay in armor if possible. So even though it loses us 900 HP effective hit points overall, it'll actually give us more armor, which will make a big difference when the Logi shows up. Now, we have a nice little ship here that, let's see, boom, it will warp in 3 seconds, okay, awesome. Does 5k a second, that's also awesome. Warps at 5 AU a second. That's going to be something we might want to look at, but that might also add CPU. So let's just try that. Let's try and add a hyperspatial to see if we can get to real cheap Inti zone here. Boom, oof, that is a bad CPU penalty for these warp speed rigs here. And it gets us 1 extra AU a second, though. And when you think about the actual point of this ship, I think that it's going to be better for us to even go back now and add on the damage control and adaptive nano scenario, because that 1 AU a second might make the difference between you catching a really juicy ratting kill or not. So let's just go with it. All right, so we're going to leave that on there. We got 2 more rig slots. Resists for this do matter because, like I said, Warrior 2s are prevalent, and they'll be especially prevalent chasing these little Atrons around as a tackle stuff. So we're going to fill that explosive hole there, so anti-explosive pump. That drops us down to 4795. Armor rigs are really harsh as far as speed goes. So why don't we add a polycarb on? Now this is something I would normally not do, adding a polycarb rig on, because if you see here, it loses you 100 HP because the polycarb's drawback is armor. And so normally it's not very synergist having armor rigs and speed rigs. But with this, what we're trying to do with this Incursus, I kind of like it. I think it's okay because we're looking for speed and we're looking for warp speed and also some tank, because we have to survive under Logi reps. So we're pretty much good, I think, here. Let's just have a look. Anything else we can do better? So we've got like 20 CPU here. Is there anything we're giving up CPU for? No, not really. There's nowhere else we can really cram on because we're so tight on this. Only other things we could add would be Tech 2 plate, which won't fit due to this without an ancillary current router, and I don't want to give up a rig slot at this point. We could also maybe drop a couple of these guns down a bit, but I think it's pretty good the way it is. And so let's see what we get here. So in Full damage mode. The Atron is sitting at 168 overheated, which is really nice. I mean, it's not even that much less than what we've got here. And it's got about 1,700 less hit points than the Incursus, so it's not even that bad, really. And it's also really, really fast. And it's got a long point on it, which is nice. So what I would recommend, though, flying these is switch to Null. One of the Atron's bonuses here is small hybrid turret fall off, and that gives us really nice ranges of 2.6 plus 5.3. You won't want to use Null against an enemy ship. You will want to use against drones, though, because if you can picture this, you're zipping around, orbiting this target at 5k seconds sometimes, or 3,500. The enemy drones are catching up to you, and so this is like a high-speed scenario where you're going to be applying your web to the drones as they come in, and shooting them, and they will drop out of range fast. But the combination of Null, which gives it, nearly 7-kilometer range, and the web slowing the drone down drastically, I think you'll find that it probably works out a lot better to shoot drones with Null. And then once you've killed the drones, or your enemy fleet gets here, your Logi gets here, and you don't care about the drones anymore, you can flip it over to damage, to Void, and go on in. And Void, I would use over Caldari Navy Antimatter if you can, just because the tracking on electrons and ion blasters is really great anyways. You'll probably be doing full DPS, plus there's webs and scrams involved here. And let's just see what the Atron tanks. Probably going to be just a bit less, but still going to be just fine for what we're getting out of this package here. Cool. So the Atron's tank 205 DPS. That's really nice. Thing's fast as heck, and yeah, I think it does. I think it does its job of a budget interceptor for 5.3 million. That fits into our armor fleet really well. So yeah. So with 10 guys, you could have 1 or 2 Inties or Atrons. You can have 2 Logis. I would say. I'd say Logi scales up really nicely when there's 2, because if you're doing a lone Logi, you're gonna have to deal with you taking damage, and 5.7k EHP. Not really that much, honestly. So, with a fleet like this, I would try and bring 2. I mean, if it's only 3 or 4 of you, you might not even want to go Logi. You might want to just bring extra damage and try and kill stuff faster. But, if there's 4 or 5, or maybe 6, go 2 Logi, and then the rest Incursus, or maybe 1 Atron. Yeah, and so what we have here is a really nice, a really decent, small, cheap fleet. The most expensive ship is the Incursus at 9.3 million, and like I said, we can drop all that down. And if you can't use Tech 2 guns, it's completely fine. You might even be able to play around and upgrade the sizes a little bit here and there, because Tech 1 guns will fit much better. So basically all these fitting problems we've been having are due to the fact we're using Tech 2 guns, which have the worst fitting. So yeah, if you just want to go full on cheap fleet, you could probably do any of these ships for under 3 million ISK for maybe 75% of the total capability. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for this. Hendrik, got any questions or comments or anything?
No, pretty much. You answered it with how many of each ship you want to put into a fleet. How often do you see these sort of fleets roam around in like places like Logi?
I don't see them very much, honestly. And it's basically, I think, because of sort of power creep and skill points, and everyone has ISK, so people fly fancier fleets or Tech 2 fleets, but these do the job, and they'd be really fun. I always get inspired to go do stuff for cheaper, even though I have ISK kind of idea. And one thing I'll say to anyone who's listened this far, this isn't the only version of this. You could take Tormentors and Inquisitors from Amar, and what's the little Amar frigate that's fast? Executioners. Do pretty much the same thing. I just chose to go with Galente today. You could also do it with Caldari or Mimitar, and you can also mix and match. The Inquisitor, I think, has a little more hit points than the Navitas, but it has a little less speed. So I just went all Galente now. But if you guys are listening and if you feel inspired to do anything, go ahead and just try and do 3 ships from a different race, and just post it in the comments on Reddit or on Crossings. Even has comments on articles, right?
Yeah.
Post it there. I'll be interested if you get. I always like seeing little fleet concepts and stuff, so feel free. Oh, and also I forgot a drone down here for the Navitas. Let's be real here. The Navitas has no offensive modules on it. You want to get on kills, go crazy, throw a Hobgoblin in there. Don't add a small armor bot. Who gives a crap, honestly? And you know what you can do too? Drop a cat booster down. No, don't do that. Get one of your buddies in an Incursus to bring a mobile depot with them, and then bring a hull rep bot, and then you can fix your hull that way or whatever, or even bring an extra hull rep. So yeah, don't be too much of a team player. This is for fun, right? So you want to get out there and get kills in your Navitas as well. If you're in 0-0, All you need to do is just pop out that hobgob, sign it to your favorite Incursus, and just get on with Logi. And if you're in low sec, the drone assign doesn't work, but it's not that hard generally speaking. And this is actually a really good fleet just to get people kind of paying a little more attention to their ships. Like when you're in a big battleship with 30 Logis or whatever, you've got normally a lot of buffer, so you get a little more time to broadcast. With Logi frigates, you got to be a little more on the Logi frigs and frigs got to be more on the ball, and also pay attention to your piloting with the blasters for sure. Like you really want to make sure every ship in your fleet is actually at damage range. Like if you're FCing one of these and you got a second, have a quick look at where your fleet is. And catch the one or two dudes who I know for a fact will be micro-warp driving around like morons. So yeah, just a good fleet to learn some stuff, have some fun. I'd fly this fleet myself though. I think it'd just be really fun.
And yeah, for more articles, just visit us at Crossing Zebras. Thanks.